Hello and welcome to another Pauper video. This is Decks of the Week, formerly Trophy Tuesdays, but I want to kind of expand what I'm doing here. We were going to look at all the trophies from Magic Online for a week, plus the Pauper challenges, and check out 5 very spicy decks, so stick around. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought about the video. Check out patreon.com/kalikaiz for sideboard guides. Hit the YouTube membership join button if you want early access to videos, and check out cardmarket.com, the largest seller of Magic the Gathering cards in Europe. So what happened in the leagues this week? We had Gruul Ramp taking the top slot with Mono Red close behind and Affinity there. If you look at the percentages of 5-0s, really nothing was super high, which is huge, especially after Mono Red had a very, very, very good week. It seems like people are now able to sideboard into it or change their decks for that, which has been pretty good. I've also heard that that Affinity is quite good versus Mono Red, especially with the Toxin Analysis and Krark-Clan Shaman combo. We have Mono Blue Terror and Jund Glee, and then Dimir Terror following it up. Only 140 trophies this week, which is much more close to normal. I'm not sure what that 170 week was all about. So here is the combined metagame. We have Gruul and Glee both at 10% of the trophies, and then Mono Red at almost 8%, Affinity at almost 8%, with the same number of trophies at 11. Mono Blue Terror. So 2 different Terror decks following that up, but they play a lot differently, so I did not combine these specifically. Then we have Madness Burn and a bunch of random stuff. Now, if we check the weekend Pauper challenges, this is from Kerblinksy on Twitter, so thank you very much for that. This shows the combined meta percentage and win rate over the weekend. We had Kuldotha Red at 14% of the metagame with a straight 50% match win rate. That's pretty interesting to see. It's still the most played deck, but not out of bounds. Then we have the second most played deck at Grixis Affinity, which has a 56.25% match win rate without mirror. And Grixis Affinity is always one of the best decks. It's just the way it's going to be moving forward. Plus, I think we also had Luffy de Chapeau, Nepalha just crushing. Then third most played was Jund Brood-Scale, then Terror, Gruul. Is It Control making a bit of a comeback? Is It Control is pretty good against Red Kuldotha because it's got a lot of cheap interaction. It can main deck the Breath Weapon, and Hydroblast post board is a huge beating. Nothing too crazy out there. Looks like Dredge had a really good weekend with the very few pilots, so that's cool to see. So now let's hop into the very, very spicy decks. The first deck that I wanted to highlight here is It Fairies. This Is It build of Fairies has not really been doing very well lately, and it's cool to see someone actually able to make it work. An interesting thing here is that they're on 4 Galvanic Discharge and 4 Scred. Galvanic Discharge scales up, and you can make this work to kill terrors, which is pretty sweet. They have only 3 ninjas, and then the Spellstutter sprites, plus an accumulated knowledge package. Very interesting. Deck number 2 is an oldie but a goodie as well, with Boros Synthesizer, playing a bunch of Novice Inspectors, Thraben Inspectors, Glinthawks, and Core Skyfishers to get a ton of value out of Experimental Synthesizer. Pick up and replay the Lembas, kill your opponent with Guardian the Guild Pact or Makeshift Munitions. Looks like they've got Krark-Clan Shaman in the main deck, the full 8 burn spells, and a Candy Trail and Krark-Clan Shaman has some tech pieces with the Prismatic Strands as well. This can be pretty good against Affinity since it is a deck that can play a bunch of Dust to Dust, Cast into the Fire, potentially also Gorilla Shaman. We've got the classic Relic of Progenitus as well, and 4 Red Blasts. Going up on Spice, we have a Cycle Storm from Brian Cook, who actually cut the 4th Reaping the Graves from the main deck and replaced it with copies of Ardent Elementalist and Mystical Teachings. He has a bunch of videos on this deck if you want to check that out at the Epic Storm YouTube channel. It's a really fun deck to play for the pilot, but not the opponent, and very, very strong and fast. The other changes is just to put a Reaping the Graves in the sideboard along with some number of Dispels, which can be for Thraben Charms, a Singleton Duress to get rid of a Weather Storm, Ploys for Burn and Swamp to bring in, It seems like Swamp could be something that you could use for a Wildfire matchup, or if you just needed more lands in general. And now we're getting really spicy here with a Jund, what appears to be Jund Glee, but it is not. It is literally just Jund Control. Jund mid-range, playing Writhing Chrysalis, Thorn of the Black Rose, and Refurbished Familiar. And then Wildfire to ramp, Galvanic Blast to kill your opponent, a bunch of removal spells, cast down, draw spells, Crypt Rats, Evolution Witness, loops. They've got Blood Fountain Witness to just keep witnessing things back and crush your opponent over a very, very long and grindy game. So if you're a fan of Junding them out, maybe this is the deck for you, or stick around, let's see what's coming up next. Before we get into the top spice of the week, this is a very spicy deck, which people love. This is Cauldron Familiar Gates. So cat food gates. Cauldron Familiar can sacrifice your Carrot Cake, your Lembas, and then they have Nested Shambler to sacrifice to make a bunch of creatures as well. Jolted Awake here instead of any other ways of getting things back. And they actually seem to have cut a Sacred Cat. So pretty sweet little deck here. Have not played this recently, but you know, everyone loves a good mid-range grind fest with Cauldron Familiar, right? Bloodthorn Vampire, that's pretty sweet too. So they can sacrifice the Nested Shambler and then or sacrifice the Cauldron Familiar to make the Bloodthorn Vampire huge. That's cool. And the deck of the week. We have Jundtron, baby. I saw this on Twitter recently. I'm not sure who the original creator was, so hit me up if you are that person. This might be their list specifically. But the way this works is we're basically playing Jund Gardens, but with Tron. You've got 3 emblem creatures with Avenging Hunter and Thorn of the Black Rose, gaining a ton of life with Fangren Marauder, beat down with Troll of Khazad-dûm, and eventually just dome your opponent with Karvik's Torch. And you can sweep with Krark-Clan Shaman and no Crypt Rats in this deck. I actually lost to this in a previous league, so, you know, it's got my stamp of approval for a very, very powerful deck. A long time ago, we had a little meme that any deck is better if you add Tron lands, and it appears that Gardens is better if you add Tron lands. So check it out if you want to grind people out. And that concludes my decks of the week. Hopefully you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next video.